As we strive toward our goals in development, from healthcare to education to strengthening democracy and economic growth, in each area we're facing a new generation of challenges, a time of failed states, and of extremism making gains where the social fabric is torn.
The challenge we face today in development is the challenge of stabilizing collapsing nations and then transforming them into viable nations.
Still, we can draw fresh inspiration for solutions from a nearly forgotten component of a legendary plan.
The good news is that we don't have to invent, that in fact, we've done it before.
It's easy to forget now how grave the crisis was in Europe after World War II. The devastation, massive, spurring social unrest.
People after World War II were facing challenges very similar to the ones we're facing today. An infrastructure in ruins, people out of work, a lack of hope.
If you add up the casualties of World War II and you add up the casualties of the HIV/AIDS pandemic, if you look at the collapse of what's happening in Africa.
If you look at Afghanistan and Iraq, if you look at the continent of Africa.
I think the challenges that face us, in fact, are as great.
Back in 1947, President Truman appointed George C. Marshall to head the European Recovery Plan, and the world began to change. Most people today associate the Marshall Plan with its massive influx of capital and goods. But there was another component in the plan, small in cost yet huge in impact, that's been nearly forgotten. It was the transfer of American know-how, technical assistance, also known as the Marshall Plan Productivity Program. That program was critical to the plan's success, and its methods still hold value today. It was created by Jim Silberman, a Department of Labor productivity expert during the war years. He toured Europe on behalf of the Marshall Plan to evaluate the status of their factories and farms. And what he found was worse than he'd expected.
What I saw in visiting factory after factory was a picture of what productivity was like in the United States in the 1910-1920 period. I felt dismayed at how far behind Europe had fallen. What excited me was the possibility of reversing this.
Jim realized success required more than rebuilding and upgrading factories. Those efforts were doomed to fall short if the human side of improving productivity wasn't addressed. His solution? Bring Europeans on factory and agricultural tours of America.
It was clear that we would have to bring over literally a person from every factory in the United Kingdom and France, employing 50 or more people, to see for themselves a technology a generation and more in advance of theirs, and to bring back what they thought they could incorporate.
By the end of 4 years, Silberman had organized 1,500 productivity tours in factories throughout America.
There's a 1992 World Bank report that basically says that the Technical Assistance Program of the Marshall Plan was the single most effective, cost-effective, far-reaching technical assistance program ever developed and ever delivered.
But Silberman's approach went far beyond simple factory and farm study tours. The real secret lay in how he meticulously defined every step and laid out the key principles to get results. It's hard to imagine now, but a staggering 25,000 Europeans went on these tours, every day seeing new ideas, and every night sharing, analyzing, and carefully noting down everything for a detailed end-of-project report. Because the greatest impact of all was to come from their follow-through back home. Before any trip, participants had to agree to publish and otherwise spread what they'd learned as widely as possible, including to their competitors.
But once you get back, the prime purpose which you have after the preparation of your report is to see that the dissemination of the knowledge which you get, as we say, the spread of know-how, is carried right to the nth degree.
In Great Britain alone, 1 million copies of 200 different study tour reports were distributed. That ripple effect spread ideas far beyond any one factory back home.
It's very likely that the productivity program of the Marshall Plan kick-started the increase in productivity in the European economy after the war.
In France, just 10 years out from the war, the standard of living had literally doubled. France, recognizing the role of Silberman's program, gave to Jim on behalf of the American people the French Legion of Honor Medal, their highest civilian honor. There's a direct link between the Marshall Plan productivity program and USAID. Silberman continued his work with the U.S. Foreign Assistance Program, the predecessor to USAID, and then joined the agency itself until 1970.
There are factors in the Marshall Plan that can be applied to Africa, to Asia, to Latin America, to Eastern Europe. The beauty of the Marshall Plan Technical Assistance Program is that it took a relatively small amount of resources and leveraged them to have a huge impact.
But to many at USAID, a likely first reaction to Silberman's methods is, aren't we doing tours just like this? And the answer lies in how closely you look at it.
With some exceptions, we don't do those type of study tours. What we've lost is this idea of a systematic approach in which training is a vehicle for looking over and analyzing an entire situation. We've lost the sense that we were transforming, and we got into a mode of incremental improvement. And now I think we have to get back to a sense of true transformational change. That's what we think has to be recovered.
So then, what qualities distinguish what Silberman tours did from so many of those done today? Charles Weiss has spent years analyzing where some of those key differences lie.
These were carefully planned technical tours with a clear purpose, with a clear definition of objective. You look at production, you look at marketing, you look at wholesaling, you look at retailing, you look at financing, you look at regulation. Then the participant can pick out the things that he or she can use in his or her own context, back in their country.
Weiss and others point out that what often differs between study tours then and now is the comprehensive, strategic approach Silberman defined.
The success of what was called the Marshall Plan Participant Training Assistance Program represents the most outstanding example that we could most easily rediscover, extract its basic principles, and apply them systematically across a vast range of our programs.
And what comes through are 6 essential principles. Some we know and act on, but others